Okay, so I've got my guy from a stock site. I've got a Photoshop file going, and I'm in the middle of Illustrator creating some pieces that I can use. 3D element as well as just kind of a basic throne. I'm sharing my screen. Let's take a look at what we've got here in Illustrator. There's my scepter and there's the base of my throne. I'm kind of happy with how that's going to work out. So I'm just going to click on this guy and say copy. Well, edit copy or just Command C. And then switch back to Photoshop. This is, by the way, Command Tab. You know that trick. You can see all your applications that you have open. And then switch back to Photoshop. Here we are. I'm going to turn off that throne and show you what I've got. So I'm going to put my guy here, and then I'll just hit Command C or Command V, paste. It says, now listen, you've got a vector object on your clipboard in your back pocket. Do you want to keep it a vector object? I could do that, or I could bring it in as just pixels and then play with it as an image like that. You can experiment with either one of these things. I can also bring in the path itself that I drew in Illustrator and use that in here. As you know, there's a path tool up here in Photoshop where I can get paths and do things with those. So there's lots of interesting things that you can do, drawing a path and then filling it, making a selection out of that. I'm going to bring this in as pixels over here and say, okay, and holy, is that a big scepter or what? Hey, buddy, you got a nice big scepter there. I'm going to shift click and shrink that, not shift click. I'm just going to shift, I'm going to shrink it, put it there, maybe rotate it a little bit. You see, when it comes in, it still says, you can mess around with this thing. I can enlarge it. I can actually shift and enlarge it and make it long and skinny. So there's lots of stuff that you can do even at this point and get it to look like it's going to sit in his hand right there. I've got to fix his thumb, I know, but that is something that we can do later on. So Sarah, there, I'm kind of happy with that. And now I've got by the way, every time I paste something, I got to get zoom out of the way. Zoom's always in the way. Have you ever noticed that? You notice that when I pasted that in, it said, I'm just going to give you a new layer. So every time you bring something in, if you paste it in there, the stock image, a piece of type, a copy from Illustrator, it's going to give you a brand new layer, which I would like you to name. So you see, I've got a layer for scepter already up here. Not a lot different than what we had. I changed the lighting on that a little bit, and it's a little bit smaller. But that's what I would like you to do is name your layers. And then I can come back to Illustrator and say this thing, this big fat throne that I made, copy that, come back here to Photoshop and say paste me. I also want to paste that as pixels, and it's monstrous. So I'm going to put that down here. I think I'll probably shrink it a bit. Maybe all I'll do is hold down the shift key so I can make it fatter, and that will change the proportions of this thing. So there, I'm kind of happy with that. And now you might say, yeah, but it's on top of his face. Yes, it is. First thing I have to do is hit the return key to say I accept the changes, the paste and the shape that I put it in there. Good. Now I can grab this layer, pull it underneath the guy, and now he's sitting on a throne. How cool is that? And then what I can do is lots of things in terms of saying I want to change the way that the shading works. I want to change the position of that. I'm just going to move him around a little bit, and then I can start going back onto my throne and making some things happen. Like, for example, if I wanted to make this shape in here different, let's say I wanted to paint a little bit of a kind of a cushy spot for him to sit his behind on. So what I'm going to do is use the magic wand tool, and I'm on my layer 4. I'm on my throne layer. I haven't named it throne, but you just double click there and say throne. And so I can use my magic wand tool. I could select the throne itself. I could just click on that. If I find myself on a layer like the guy, let's say I wanted to paint on the guy, I could pick this spot here and it would only get his cheek, or this spot here and it would get his suit. But this is cool. Look at this. If I click out here, I get everything that's not him. I get everything. Everything else is blank. So if I click out there with my magic wand tool, I get everything that's not him. And then what I can do is select inverse. And now I can paint on him really easily and not have to worry about I'm going to mess up the stuff that's in the background. So let's say we wanted to do that with the throne. Deselect, Command D, deselect, go to the throne. I'm going to click back here with my magic wand tool. The throne's all the same color. So that means right now I can click on it once and get the whole darn thing. But now this is kind of fun. What I can do is go to select, and I'm going to shrink this selection. What I'd like to do is I want to select a shape that's just like this, but it's smaller. It's in here. So I'm going to say, I'm going to contract my selection by maybe 20 pixels. I don't know exactly, but let's guess 20 pixels. And look at that. Now I've got that inset. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to select, modify, contract. Let's go 50 pixels. Let's come way in. Doink. So you see what I'm doing? I'm basically choosing a shape inside the throne that I can then paint on. And then if I said, well, I only want the back of it, I grab my rectangular marquee here, hold down the Option key. Notice it turns into a little minus sign there. Alt on your PC. And then I'm just going to slice off the bottom of that. So now what I've got is only the back of the throne. And now I've got a space on which I can paint. And then I could say, I'm going to fill that with a different color, fill with, say, this color. I can use my magic or my eyedropper right here to say, give me this color right here. And say, okay, color. This color. Yes, okay. And then okay. And gadunk, it drops that in there. And then I can even, mess around with this in terms of shading on that. Because it's a selection in there, I could pick this, grab my color, get a darker version of that color, and then use a big soft brush. So I'm going to make my brush bigger. I can choose it right here. You notice it says 60 pixels. I'm going to make it, 200 pixels or something like that. And the hardness is 0, which means that it's an airbrush. It's very soft on the edges. Okay. And then I might even come back up here and say, I don't want the opacity to be almost anything. I want to make the opacity like 40%, something like that. So now I can do something like this and paint in behind him and make it look like he's sitting on that throne. Isn't that cool? So I'm casting a shadow right there behind him with a soft brush inside the back of the chair only. Pretty cool. The other thing I can do with this is hit the FX button, and it's going to give me a chance to bevel and emboss that shape that I got selected right there. No, it's going to actually do the whole darn. I have to make a layer out of this part. So I could do that. I can make a layer out of just this part. In fact, that's what I'll do right now because I want you to see how to do that. Layer, new, layer via copy. What that's going to do is take whatever's in my selection, the back of the throne, and make a brand new layer out of that. Layer via copy. Yes. Now what I've got is that by itself on its own layer, just the back of the throne. And then I can take that layer and say, I want to do triple. I want to do special effects on this, bevel and emboss. And I can really play with this thing. I can get inner bevel on this thing or a pillow emboss. Pillow emboss is kind of fun. That'd be just right for this thing. And I want it to be quite a bit because I want it to be really obvious that things are happening, baby. And size is right here. There's that. I can change the controls for things like, you ever notice zoom is always in the way? Come on, get out of my face. I can change where the light is falling over here. I can change things like the contour, how dark this is going to be here. Opacity is going to come down way like that. So you see what I mean? I can make a lot of really interesting things happen on that layer just alone and make that look like it's kind of a 3D shape. So there's some pretty interesting things that you can do inside Photoshop to make effects like that happen. I hope you think that's kind of cool. I will come back and show you how to put some photograph inside the type that we're going to put on your Cash is King. Hopefully you're having some fun. See you.